Hello, so we've got some more bits that have come in. I've just uploaded a video a little while ago around the Crementer reveals, which I've just been catching up on. Although this time I'm at home rather than in front of the Eiffel Tower. So you can find that video. It should be like linked to at the end as well. But basically, this card, Harmonics Messiah, it's got the errata now updated. Similarly to what the effect is in Cardfight 0, which is now an end of service game. This card has also become now a limited card, so you can only play one in your G zone as part of the errata, because they don't want you to spam certain effects. But also, you may notice the template of this card is quite old. This is basically a prototype stride. The footer there is basically the traditional main deck kind of footer, where you have like the grey box, just like with your normal units. But also, there's no plus icon next to the 16,000, and also you may notice the clan has a dash. Well, now they've kind of changed that because the dash has actually become nothing altogether, and they've updated the footer to use the red that was introduced in G set 1, so it's no longer in that prototype state, and it's got the plus as well, so now it's like a 16k plus that has an effect actually, which means you just got to remember your Vanguard when you stride has 1k more power than what you're used to. So if you go into like, if you use the G bosses, it's going to be 32. If you use like the 13k bases, then it's going to be 34. So yeah, is it 34? Or no, I'm getting this wrong. Hold on. It's going to be 29, sorry. I think I'm too used to using boosters sometimes. So yeah, it's going to be about 29k rather than 28. So yeah, this is sort of like one of the things that's going to change. But also, when placed on Vanguard, you can choose any number of your locked cards, unlock them, and then you choose the same number of cards from your hand as the number of cards unlocked by this effect, and you discard them, which is pretty good if you're against Link Joker. Let's just say you slip up because you're not well practiced against the matchup, or your deck doesn't have counters against it. Well, now you do. You can have a second chance at coming back and opening your field up. And of course, you can only really use this once, so just be aware of that. So you need to just time it well, but it gives you another chance to kind of compensate for the slip up. It's also worth noting that I think the decks that make better use of this card will be the decks that have like good supporting rear guards. So for example, Great Nature with Crown Tiger could somewhat make better use of this, rather than a deck that relies too much on the strides doing all the heavy lifting. So just something kind of important to note as well. And other than that, there is also just the fact that you have discard, so it kind of balances out for Chaos players. Chaos, or Messiah for that matter, but any of these Link Joker decks that have basically floodgate effects and Mayor Conley, they do tend to, in some matchups, like drastically alter the kind of difficulty, because basically what happens is the opponent is now playing under like a whole set of rules, and it's very easy because of that to slip up and make a mistake where you basically punish yourself hard, and you basically you just fall behind, because once they get kind of the right kind of control over you, then it's very hard to recover in some cases as well, particularly depending on the deck you're playing. So it's sort of like a second chance for that reason. Now, there's another ability where it says Vanguard Circle G Zone. When placed on Vanguard or at the beginning of your turn, if this card is face up, your damage zone has 2 or less cards, and no new card was put into your damage zone during your opponent's preceding turn, you can basically put the top card of your deck into damage zone as a cost, and you draw a card. So it's got that sort of clock mechanic from Weiss Schwartz, so you can just put a card into your clock and draw a card. Basically, you're doing yourself a damage draw. But the thing is that you have to stride this on turn 3, or you have this flipped during turn 3 by one of your strides that is not the errata on hit strides. So like the premium collection strides that we've had previously, they can flip any unit, and then after that you can then go into this on turn 4 to then give yourself the damage. So it depends on the situation really, but there are a few situations, like Gizeh matchup is a situation where you're more likely to want to inflict yourself a damage. It also gives you the chance that if you want to commit and rush in your opponent, but you don't have cards that self-retire in the battle, but you still want to be able to push out those aggressive cards, well, it's kind of handy that Harmonics Messiah, if you're like on 1 damage and your opponent decides, or 2 damage, and your opponent decides, okay, well, I'm going to attack into your rear guards that you were attacking into me and hitting me hard with last turn, you can now just be like, okay, well, I'm just going to now use this card's skill and then take more damage. So it's a counter against Gizeh, which is Messiah's arch nemesis anyway, ironically. But yeah, maybe there's some other matchups that'll come in the future that this will be more useful against. It's also good in that you don't really need grade 3 heals to deal with stuff with damage as much now. Obviously, grade 3 heals though, they are more usable because all you have to do is place them while you're on 0 damage, and it doesn't matter what units you have available. So now the other thing is that when your grade 1 unit is placed by riding from grade 0, if you went second, you can reveal this card. So it doesn't matter if it's face up or face down. You can then add a Guardian Shield ticket into your hand. So it's just like the Blitz Sword with the quick shields, which they apply to V starters. The difference is that unlike the V starters, which were erratas that only affected grade 0s with the generic V series effects, this is actually usable with any starter, which is great because the problem I had with the quick shield idea was that basically it kind of just added more arguments for why you should play V starters, which made the game more stale because it meant that deck building became very basic and it really ruined like the legacy of like the old starters, which has just been a kind of a boring aspect of the game. And obviously D series sort of has that kind of problem where the starters all do the same thing. You may notice though it's kind of similar to D in that because D they didn't really repeat what V did, which is that it said if you basically ride grade 1, sorry, if you ride over your starter and your opponent has the same grade or greater, then you get the quick shield. So people could technically grade store on grade 0 just to try and get that quick shield. Now it's a bit different because it's now tracking turn order, just like with the D starters as well. So if you go second, you're getting that you will be the one that will get that shield rather than the opponent. The opponent can't do anything. You can't. Your opponent going first can't do anything. That is to try and basically take that from you. So it's made things a bit simpler in that regard. That's kind of like one of the changes. But yeah, I think now we've got more reason to consider playing G starters kind of as well. Or well, it's not really a unique advantage for G starters, but it definitely is it's basically an addition that doesn't make G stars feel like they're falling behind, which is I think nice as well. And it's kind of a bit of a difference between how they're handling cards now versus how they did it during V series, where V series I think felt very short term, like everything that came out was kind of relevant in that moment, but then when the new thing comes out, then the older stuff just became well a bit more obsolete more easily. And obviously we had Clan Collection which sort of helped some of the decks, but then we had grade 3 heals which came, and obviously grade 0s kind of became a bit rubbish to play because you really need those grade 3 heals if you want to survive high roll. But now you've got the Guardian Shield, so if your opponent high rolls you're going to get that Guardian Shield of 20,000 shield and add it to your hand. So this is the Guardian Shield right here, 20,000. Basically it's just like quick shield. You give your Vanguard the penalty on the battle, or any of your units actually for that matter. So you can also get past guard restricts, of course, just like with any blitz order. So it's very good in that sense, and it means that basic grade 3 heals might end up being less important than before, arguably. So you might be able to get a bit greedy and play other heals now due to this reason. You may also notice this card's a promo, so this is probably going to be a box up if I had to guess, rather than being the main set. But you may also notice that Harmonics Messiah is also set code 001 triple rare, so it's the main card of the set. This is going to be probably the chase card because I don't think the original Harmonics is even that easy to find anyway. But yeah, even the other heals, like the grade 0 V series heals, which I've got a pile of Sphere Maguses in foil, which I'm never going to be able to shift. Well, wouldn't have been able to shift, but now I might be able to because there's a chance now that they are basically trying to make it so that depending on your deck list, you may consider different types of heals, which I think is great because they've kind of freed up the luxury of having that kind of decision making. Yes, you have less ways of having like early game defense, but it's about like figuring out how much early game defense you need from your testing and how much you can kind of pave the way forward to play something else, like for example the counter charge heals or sub clan name heals. And on the topic of that, we do have the new erratas for the heals as well. So just like the critical triggers, which got upscaled shield to 15 and power to 10, the same thing's happening to heals. So it's just like with D series really, 50k shields going on here. And it's going to be great because a lot of the sub-clan heals, a lot of the heals are sub-clans, except for like a few like touch cards in raw pattern, which aren't. But like I'm going to be excited for this in Regalia. Zodiac Timepiece, which is technically a race, not a sub-clan, but Zodiac Timepiece will also benefit. So they finally got a trigger that has upscaled value as well. So there's a lot of nice things coming basically to improve the quality of life. And provide people options on different heals to play. You might decide, okay, well, you're not playing grade 3 searchers. That gives you one less argument for playing grade 3 searchers. You might be playing a sub-clan that gives you another argument. You might need countercharging your deck, another argument to play these. So it's great that you can now sort of like get a feel for what might be more needed as you're testing your decks. Like, deck building is no longer just auto-include these triggers because you have to play them. It's a bit more complicated now. And even on that topic, like Generation Break 1 criticals, which was sort of starting to kind of feel like filler in decks, while you auto-include 4 Stratus crits. Even that, which by the way, that period has been a pretty monotonous period of triggers. Like basically, you kind of don't really... The triggers kind of just build themselves a lot of times. So it's just like auto-include 4 strike crits, auto-include 4 grade 3 heals, auto-include draw perfect cards, auto-include the over trigger, and then fill it up with whatever. Obviously there might be discrepancies with some decks, but a lot of times that was your generic kind of deck building, more or less. So it's good to kind of see these sort of things happening where we've got the new crits, we've got the new heal erratas. Now there's actually more option to debate. Even the GB1 crits have now more of a place because the strike crits might not even be the best cards to play in every deck, because with the new G bosses, you basically can't do the on hits with stride assist. You have to actually use actual raw sum of grade 3, because you're not actually paying the cost for stride, you're just paying the cost of the effect, and then you do the stride. So it's a bit different. It's not the stride step stuff in that case. So you may need to do that when your opponent's on grade 2, and then you get your gift markers, and therefore that means that you probably won't need your stride assist as much until like turn 4. But even with that being said, you may be playing stride assist grade 1s, so then that gives you less reason to need stride crits, maybe because you might already have enough, and then therefore you might decide, well, okay, then I might just play more GB1 crits than stride crits, as an example, because you might find you prefer to just gain soul instead, or you want to be able to attack with more crits, or you might be able to scry through your deck and dig deeper, maybe deck yourself out, or maybe find some heal triggers to G-Guard with, any of that stuff really. So there are arguments for playing GB1 crits over strike crits. So there's I'd actually recommend picking some up, by the way, of those GB1 crits, because I know a lot of people do buy strike crits and just ignore GB1 crits. So yeah, there's a lot more depth now, and that's really good. And you may even decide, okay, well, maybe I should do a split of grade 3 heals and countercharge heals as well. Also valid. So I really like that, because deck building has been kind of a little bit boring to some extent, because of how little there has been to think about when it comes to triggers, especially when you play the standard formats. In V format and in D format, trigger lines are pretty boring to look at most time. There's not really much to think about, so I welcome these additions. So yeah, I'm quite excited to see more from the sets, but it's been a very good set. I've actually been more excited about this than I have been for any of the premium sets that we've had before since V-Series started, because they are actually they're also just enhancing older decks as well, which hasn't really been as big of a thing. It's been more so like V plus that we've been leaning more and more into. And there's also just more cards now being enhanced, rather than it just being, here's your crit of the year, here's your one strat of the year, oh, we've got some spare space, here are some generic nation dragons or Cray Elementals, and we saw what happened with those Cray Elementals, like a few of them got banned. So we've got some more interesting stuff coming up here, where there's a lot of clan specific support, and it's actually all having like a trickle down effect where it does actually lead to older cards being, like, without even getting erratas, becoming more worthy of consideration, and just people have more reason to explore them again as well. So I'm really excited for that. So yeah, that's more or less it for today. And just let me know down below, like, any sort of decks that you think you might, well, any sort of implications that you're going to be finding with these reveals. And until then, I'll see you guys later. Bye.